Good morning. It was sunny for a minute, and now it's not, unfortunately.
It's sunny where you are.
Yeah.
I was going to say the sun visited me.
We've got little smatterings of it.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Okay, looks like we're about ready to go. It's 10 o'clock, so I'm going to open the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for January 20th, 2022. And Commissioner Sterrett, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the calendar session. I've got a couple things that we may be attending together. Today is the Nut Growers Conference at Spirit Mountain Casino. So you guys
I won't be there, but I'm there with you in spirit.
Okay, I might stop by. So kind of a cool thing. They're having it at Spirit Mountain this year. So I think it's normally somewhere down in Eugene or something like that. And the other one is the Burns dinner at the fairgrounds on Saturday night at 6 o'clock. So just in case a couple of us are going there. Commissioners, did you have anything to add to the calendar?
Chair, I just have the housing and shelters tour that I'll be beginning at, or I will begin at 9 a.m. At Adult and Behavioral Health.
Okay.
I have nothing, Chair.
Okay. And I noticed we do have Willamette Workforce Partnership tour, virtual tour today at 11. So if anybody's planning on doing that, we'll try and get through the agenda. It's not too long. So
I chose not to RSVP yes for that one, just in case. But I might be. I will probably pop in if we, late.
Sounds good. Okay. Public comment. We received public comment for today. I did want to address one thing from Mark Davis. He was asking us about the Highway 18 bypass. And I'm not sure, I haven't heard a status of that, but I know there's a planning commission meeting in Minville tonight regarding that. Is anyone planning to attend? I have a fair board meeting, but commissioners or staff, is anyone planning to attend that?
I was going to listen in.
You were, okay. Okay, yeah, I think it's important too. I did reach out to former Commissioner Gex, and he said that it's definitely a concern just because the intention of the 1996 agreement was that they would minimize the stoplights, and now they're talking about putting more in. So I want to make sure that we have a presence there. And Commissioner Cool, if you have any more background on this, I'm not really sure, but.
Yeah, maybe Chair, I'm sorry, it looked like Commissioner Sarah, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say I was going to be weighing in with Councillor Chenoweth, but I would like to be listening in on the meeting as well, but I wouldn't be there physically.
Okay.
I was gonna. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. Our titles all got changed just now, anyway. The magic. Chair, I was going to mention that I've heard from some folks with the concerns about. Obviously, the making a bypass into a thoroughfare, a connector, and then having to find a new bypass somewhere. I was going to actually ask Chair Hagerberg from Parkway if he could send me some thoughts to send on to the city, because he's made a pretty strong case as well. Just like Commissioner Gex, for that, like this is a place for driving through and not for multiple signalized intersections.
Okay, yeah, that would be wonderful. Okay, so for sure we'll have somebody at least listening in tonight to kind of hear the conversation. Okay, perfect. All right, that brings us to our work session, and we have one item on the work session: review and discussion of ARPA nonprofit grant program proposal. And just a quick recap, this is part of our economic impact kind of bucket of money. We have about 2.2 million or so in this bucket. And Ken, did you want to lead us in this discussion? Carrie, I see Carrie's on as well.
Yeah, so I'm gonna hand it off to Carrie to because she did the lion's share of the work. And you know, you're correct. As far as the introduction and the funds that we had identified for this nonprofit grant grant program, which falls under the economic impacts or the responses in making funds available. So yesterday, Carrie had shared a draft document, and hopefully everyone has that before you, and we'll be sure to also include that in the packet after the work session later today. So on that, Carrie, did you want to take it from there? Did you want to share screen, or were you just going to run through the document?
I'm just going to run through the document if that's okay. I think everybody has a copy.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay. So I'm not going to read through it. I just thought that I would highlight some of the things that have been updated or changed. And then when I'm done, then if there are any questions or items that need to be discussed further, we can do that. So just a reminder, we're talking about a pool of money that is approximately $2,265,438 for nonprofits. On the first couple of pages that you have in the guideline recommendations, these are largely unchanged from water and sewer. These are grantee and grantor obligations under Arpa, and they are very basic and did not experience any changes through the final rules. If you go to page 2, the reporting section towards the bottom has been updated for quarterly reports that reflect this timeline. Page 3, the recommendation is to open these grants February 7th through March 7th, which is 30 days. Then there would be a review period by a selection committee that is approved by the board for March 8th through 30th, with recommendations coming back to the board on March 31st, and probably an estimated project time start for May 1st, because that gives us 30 days to sign contracts and to get checks out and things like that. In the eligible applicants, we have added 501c6s as requested by the board. In the grant categories, we have updated capital purchase to also include acquisition grants as requested. In the eligible uses, I added a final rule update in the quote in the first sentence, and that basically is the only change that would impact these applications in this grant process. The final rule expanded definitions and uses, so there shouldn't be any restrictions on that.
Yeah, and just to clarify on that, U.S. Treasury released some updated draft rules, what they're calling their draft final rules, that actually won't go into effect until April. However, the U.S. Treasury guidance has said we could go ahead and start because, if anything, they've expanded the eligible uses within the draft final rule. So U.S. Treasury guidance went out that we can go ahead and start following, even though it hasn't been adopted and are in effect, but we can go ahead and start following the draft rules right now.
On page 4, under the match requirements, the only change is that no match will be required for the first 4 categories, and the only match required would be for capital purchase and acquisition projects, and those would be the same options as were available to the water and sewer. 50% of the total project budget or 100% of the total grant award. Just a reminder, this will be for applications up to 500,000. So it really demonstrates that there is an internal capacity financially to take this project on. The award timeline again is applications would be due by Monday, March 7th at 6 p.m. The eligible projects, nothing has changed, and eligible expenses, those have not changed. On page 5, one change that this may be something that we discuss. We allowed multiple applications in the water and sewer program without restriction. This is an unusual thing. Normally, any grant program would limit to one application. Based on our initial feedback from people in the community, we know we're going to receive a lot of applications for the nonprofit grants. My suggestion would be to limit one application per entity, or as an alternative, one application per category with a maximum limit of 2 per organization, because it gets huge fast, and it will. So, and that might be something that we talk about a little bit. Next page. So put together, the next couple of pages are the actual questions that would appear on the application. In the first section, we've got the funding justification, which is number 4. This is what will allow Ken to report to the Treasury and also make sure that the selection committee and the commissioners feel confident that any particular application that we see and approve fits within the guidelines. And for nonprofits, that essentially is that there has been some sort of impact on your organization or your constituencies. The organization information is very basic. On page 7, there is what is the problem or need that your proposal is addressing. I've added section E, describe your level of collaboration with other agencies on this project. That is in response to the board request that we focus on complete delivery systems. In the solutions and activities, F and H, past performance and successes, and what significant or lasting impact does this project or program propose? Those are in response to the board request for generational impact projects and for grantees that have an established track record. On page 8, in the explain your plan and the measurements and evaluation, we've got number 22 and number 23. These are in response to the board request to know if applicants have been past recipients of grant programs, and if so, what was the success? You know, what was the project and how did it go? And I'm going to mention now and then come back to in a minute that we're going to use a non-numerical score for this, because we don't know at this point if an applicant is going to say yes, right? So did you have a past grant, yes or no? And if yes, then tell us about it. So we'll use a little bit different scoring criteria, and I'll explain that later. And then the rest of the budget and budget narrative is the same budget worksheet. It's a very basic and allows for the applicant to describe any discrepancies so that they demonstrate their financial performance. Then when you get to page 10, this is the scoring criteria and the points. And so you've got all of the individual sections that the selection committee would be reviewing based on the subcategories that are listed in the previous pages, so that they know that there's a complete answer. On number 8 and 9, we're going to use the non-numeric score. This allows the selection committee to evaluate and consider the answer without negatively impacting the score for the whole pool, if that makes sense. We don't want to give bonus points. We don't want to take away. So this gives us an opportunity to discuss it with the selection committee. And if you look at the way bottom, so the non-numeric scoring would be not applicable, successfully completed project, unsuccessfully completed project, or incomplete project. And that will give us enough information about the kinds of involvement that we've had before. The other new piece is the overall impact or criterion strength. I receive a lot of questions from people about how to interpret their scoring. And so I'm offering this as a way to determine based on your points, and it is not specific to any point value. So whether it's 100 points or 50 points or 75 points, these are the percentages that give you a sense of where you would fall in fundability. And one other thing, before I open it to your questions, is Ken and I were thinking it would be really great if the commissioners could suggest maybe 3 individuals that you would like to see on the selection committee. That way we can, I can start looking for that and putting that together. But if that's something that you're interested in doing, then that would be much appreciated. So
yeah, and I'm thinking, you know, to kind of help with the discussion, you know, because for staff, that's going to be the first question is, you know, if you kind of go back up to page 3 in the proposal. So one of the first questions that comes up, you know, or the highlights that we have is we have a selection committee appointed by the board. And like Carrie was saying, our suggestion, you know, because this is one for a nonprofit. I don't think we have a standing committee or an existing committee that would necessarily fill this role in reviewing these types of applications. And so the thought that we had that if each commissioner had 3 individuals to, you know, to add to the list, and then we could come back to the full board and then review that, and you could act on that review committee that way. So I just figured that's our first question we had out there, and I figured I'd walk through some of our other questions. So the board's thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah, that was one of my questions, is how do we assemble that committee? You know, and it's difficult because I wouldn't want anybody whose organization is submitting applications. So I think we're going to have a challenge, because those are the folks that know where the needs are too. So I don't know how we want to handle that. I was thinking just generally maybe folks that are connected to our education system, you know, our hospital system, folks that work with our houseless populations. I mean, in my opinion, it needs to be a good range of folks.
Apologies, I had to sneeze.
Something violent.
I was trying to shut it off.
So that was just my general thought, but I thought this is really going to be a challenge, because a lot of these folks will be submitting applications. Commissioners, thoughts on that?
I was just going to say, this is something that we have as a challenge each time we do these applications. And
Yeah.
so there's certainly, we try to get a broad spectrum. A lot of local government officials are great for this. Also to look at the association levels for these different industries and areas so that they don't have that. But then of course we go through a recusal process as well. So making sure that nobody has any conflict of interest and that we shuffle those around.
Okay, commissioners, thoughts on choosing 3 people?
Commissioner Sterrett unmuted herself a little bit before me, but I will say that I think that it's important for us to, I think the process of putting forward 3 names, the folks that come to mind at the kind of the regional governmental level is that I know that most city managers or the city administrator are very, very aware of what's happening in their communities at an intense, I mean, it's not deep, but it's real complete. But then also school boards and school superintendents are also very aware. And so those were the folks in addition, in addition to chamber leadership. So those are kind of the general areas.
Yeah, and the only thing that I was going to highlight is we're not necessarily looking for, you know, names today. I think because again, we have time, you know, because if you look at the timelines, we're going to, you know, we still have, you know, several weeks before, you know, we wouldn't, you know, it closes, the application period closes on March 7th, you know, so we would want to have, and it's something, you know, and I think if the board's wanting to do this, it's something that we could do a solicitation. We could, if you wanted to do some individual reaching out to maybe, like Commissioner Kula was saying, you know, to city managers or partner organizations that, you know, that maybe they're not going to fall into this category, or they're not going to be submitting an application, or just citizens, you know, or individuals that are in the community that would have an interest and be willing to serve on this type of a committee. So So again, I kind of wanted to, I think the big thing is if the board's supportive of that, we would want to initiate something to then maybe establish a timeline on when we would want to have a list of names that then the board could consider and take action on.
Commissioner Sterrett?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that all of us are going to probably have a different take on who should be on this. I would steer clear of anybody in government. I kind of want to go into the community, the folks who typically don't weigh in or have dogs in fights. And I think the more ties you have, that's just my opinion, but I think there's a lot of merit to a variety of different people connected to government, not connected to government. So we get a broad range. I had a couple of questions, but it was beyond this, the review panel.
Okay, well, let's tackle this first. How do you feel about maybe dividing the county up into cities and having us sort of focus each on a group of cities to narrow down a little bit so that we feel like we're getting broad representation? So like,
Chair, I would propose something maybe like a slightly different, but more, which is a call for grant evaluators. And in the text of we're looking for broad regional representation. And then it would be a way for Commissioner Sterrett to kind of like drill down into communities where she's like, hey, I want to have somebody from this area who's never, that maybe that has never had an application for a grant. It would allow that. But again, it would maybe be more like broad regional representation. And then we can look at what that looks like when they come to us.
Sure, we could do that.
okay, so how does that roll? I mean, how does that roll out? So we just think of 3 people each and we have a deadline to bring those forward? Is that?
Well, I'm hearing a couple different options. It's, because it sounds like what Commissioner Kula was saying was possibly that we do a recruitment, that we're looking to stand up a committee. We're looking for interested, individuals that would like to serve on that committee, in which we could even run an ad in the paper. We could have it posted on the website. We could solicit, committee applications and then come back to the board, and then the board could review. Or the other option would be as if the board, wanted to go out. I guess at the same time, you could also reach out to folks and encourage folks to, apply that way as well. Or the other option, which our first, thought is if each commissioner had 3 individuals that you would like to have serve on this committee, that could be an option, another way to do it. So I think it's completely up to the board on how you like to proceed.
We can do a little of all too. I mean, we could certainly do a broad call for evaluators that we market in much the same way we do the other grants and see what we get. And then, reach out to other individuals that represent particular sectors. I would bring back a spreadsheet that identifies, here's the individual, here's their representation, whether that's geographic or a sector-based, and then that way you can see if it is in fact the kind of broad selection you'd like.
Okay, that sounds a little bit more streamlined, and it would help us kind of direct people to a central application or process. So, and so I'm thinking, well, if we open this up February 7th, so we wouldn't really be selecting folks until after the deadline, just because
March 8th through the 30th, because I'm anticipating a lot of volume. So, if I would probably put out the call now. If the commissioners have any thoughts or recommendations for people to reach out to, maybe if I could have that by the end of January or first week of February, that would be fine. In the meantime, we'll put out this broad call and start assembling a list. It's always easier if we have a larger pool of evaluators in a grant category like this, because we will have so many, and then the burden is not so much. As you know, with the water and sewer, we had 6 reviewers, but we had 28 applications, so everybody had to review all 28. So if we can segment that a little bit, that's always nice too.
And the other thought that I had is, if we are going to do a solicitation, we may want to revisit the timeline to a certain degree, because part of me is also thinking that if we're going to hold off on possibly appointing the selection committee, because if we want to have that as kind of a first review, make sure that anybody who's on the committee isn't also submitting an application. If we held off on doing the appointments after the close date of the review period, then stood up the committee, or just kind of adjust the timeline, then that would give us a chance to kind of do a second review and make sure that, well, everybody who's being considered they're not affiliated with an organization that's also applied. Just a thought. I know that's going to extend the timeline. It's out possibly a week or two. Carrie, thoughts?
Also do a form, in the solicitation that identifies, this is the job that we're looking for. This is the time commitment. This is the timeline that we're looking at. Also, we would need you to identify if you have any special affiliation with a nonprofit organization that might disqualify you. So we can sort of pre-qualify people before,
That's a good idea.
While we're generating the original list.
Okay, that sounds good. So commissioners, I think we should just have a general date in mind that we want to, start sending people that direction. So how does February 4th, does that work in terms of the initial sort of push?
Sure. We can do that.
Okay. Okay, so let's get those in by February 4th.
And then, I'm sorry, Chair. So the next one is, I thought, just kind of the flow, kind of working through this. The next question is around the eligible applicants. If there were any further questions or comments on the qualified nonprofit applicants, because you'll see that we have, they have to be a registered 501c3 or a 501c6 category in this. So
yeah, I have a question just about protecting the county, because 501c6 organizations can do political work as long as it's not their primary activity. So how do we protect ourselves from money going to political activity?
Well, our contract and the application specifically identifies what the money is going to be used for. There's a question that says, what specifically would the Arpa money in this project be used for? So that would be something that would just not be allowed. And if that were something we learned of later, that would disqualify, and that would set up a situation to ask for that money back.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because one of the functions talks about public outreach, and that could be, they could say we're going to engage in public outreach, and then it becomes political, and then we find ourselves in a hotspot. So, maybe it's just as simple as adding a line that says that, any political activity is not going to be allowed. I don't know, but I wanted to make sure that we covered that. Kristen,
I believe it's in the first section, but I will, I believe it's in the general information section, but I'll double check that.
We could work with Christian on some language in any of the agreements, and also, the prohibitions around, if there's specific areas like that, political activities that we need to call out, we can do that.
Okay, wonderful. Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things, just so noting that housing is in there, looking forward towards the Housing Authority. They are neither a 501 nor 501(c)(3) or 6. They're an independent government corporation. So how do we factor that into the fact that we know that there are some housing needs that they're moving forward?
We can add them to the list. We can add that as a eligible category for application.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't include governmental entities into this, and so if the board would like to add that criteria, as an eligible applicant, so Housing Authority, cities. I'm not sure who all might, kind of looking at eligibility. It's completely up to the board.
It's a big door, but we can certainly expand that. Commissioner Sterrett, you're still muted.
A distinct difference between a municipal corporation, independent government corporation, and I want to make sure that we're giving the maximum allowance for at least one organization that we know is working on housing.
I think it would be beneficial to be specific about that, and then we're not getting a flood of applicants from cities or more general government entities if we can. Commissioner Kula, are you amenable to that?
Yeah, and I was just sitting here thinking about how we could do it. Commissioner Sterrett, can you remind me of their particular status at the Housing Authority specifically? And I'm just wondering whether there are any other organizations that are that kind of entity. I mean, I know that, and sorry, I've asked you a question, but and then I also know that there, if you have the ability, if your organization has the ability to tax, that could be a good a line in there, because I'm pretty sure that the Housing Authority does not have that ability.
Yeah, so they're not 501c3 or 6, but they are what's considered, I'm told by Vicki, is a independent government corporation. So I don't know whether we make that specific carve out, but I do want to make sure that we're not opening this up to cities that are going to be, because that would be an enormous amount of work, and we're not necessarily, I'm guessing, going that way.
We can add that specifically. And sometimes what has happened in the past is that we've received an email or a call from somebody who wanted to know if they fit the eligibility criteria, and we can always review those on a case-by-case basis if we get something that we didn't foresee.
And I do have another question, and this has to do with schools, because it talks specifically about the ability to build certain affordable housing and childcare facilities, schools, hospitals, and other projects consistent with the requirements. Now, I know that Commissioner Bershauer, you've been involved in the Recovery High School movement. I've sort of come along late to the game and been very impressed with that whole concept, and made inquiries with back when Mary Alice Russell, Dr. Russell was here, and also just what our options would be in terms of facilitating a recovery high school in Yamhill County. And the way that we can address this is the fact that we just have this enormous uptick in addiction issues with youth, and all of the mental health issues that come along with those co-occurring substance abuse and mental health, and wondering if we could maybe use this to actually be a game changer in Yamhill County. Commissioner Bershauer, I don't know the specifics of is it Harmony Academy? There's only one, and it's at Merrillhurst. So there isn't another one, and we've got kids going there. Love to have something close by, but I don't know any more about that.
I believe they're technically a nonprofit. So if they wanted to come in and start up a program, they would be eligible to apply. And they also work within school districts with other nonprofits too. So I feel like the door would be open for that as well.
The vast majority of eligible programs would be a 501c3, just by nature that they need to apply for grants and they need to have that IRS status. So they probably partner with other entities like the schools. Christian.
Yeah, Chair, I would just add that it's all right. Technically, the Housing Authority is what in statutes defined as a public corporation. I don't know if you want to open this up to public corporations generally. That's a pretty broadly defined term that may go beyond what you're interested in. But if you wanted, we could look a little bit further into what types of entities might fall into that category, or as you've already been discussing, just name a couple of specific known public corporations like the Housing Authority that the board determines they want to open this up to and limit it that way.
Well, I'm looking at their business filing. It says they're a domestic nonprofit corporation. I don't know if there's a distinction there, but they're marked as a nonprofit.
Is that through Secretary of State?
Yeah.
So that won't necessarily tell you their tax status, but we could certainly look up, we could do exactly what Christian is suggesting. And we can also invite particular entities to apply as well. I mean, there's nothing that would prohibit you from doing that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the tax, the status in the Secretary of State's office just means they're a registered nonprofit corporation, 501c3, 6, and the other designators are purely what their federal tax status is.
Right.
So you could have domestic nonprofit, Oregon domestic nonprofit corporations that are not a 501c3 or a 501c6 because they haven't filed the necessary documentation with the IRS to receive their tax exempt status.
They are
Well, it says-
exempt.
It says they're a public benefit with members. Typically members are 501c6, aren't they?
Not necessarily members, but it gets really confusing. I think that the part that we're going to want to avoid is that the reason we have the criteria for registered entities is because we don't want to be in a situation where we are giving money to individuals who may have, established a nonprofit organization, but for which we would have very, very little control if there was something that went sideways. So that would be my only concern on that corporation.
Not to make things more complicated, but there is also the registers, the charity registration on the Department of Justice webpage too, which gives you more information about primarily nonprofits who are also registered charitable organizations for the DOJ. They're yeah, and I don't know if you wanted to open it up to just all nonprofit corporations in Oregon, or continue to keep it limited to those that are also tax exempt.
Yamhill County, not all of Oregon.
Right, Yamhill County, of course.
I'm not sure. Commissioners, what do you think? Because like a 501c4 would probably not be appropriate. So Commissioner Starrett, are you thinking that we just invite individually?
Well, no, because I want to make sure that we're not picking and choosing again. That could certainly not be, the optics of that are not good, that we're making a decision initially before the applications have even been put in. But if you look at them, for instance, they are exempt from federal income taxes. And I don't know what other description we would want to make to allow for them, but also make it fair in terms of the rest of anybody else in the category that would want to apply. So just want to make sure we're not singling out, we're just saying 501c or 501c3 or 6, and then discounting any application from Housing Authority.
Okay.
Christian and I can talk about this a little bit more and see if we can add some refinements.
Okay. Sound good, Commissioner Kula?
I was
Okay.
going to say that it sounds like it's something that they can work on. So
Work
that's
on.
why I muted myself again. I wonder, it might just be and DOJ registered charitable organizations, to put an and there. And that way we make sure that organizations like Housing Authority are eligible. Because, and again, I will say that I understand and I appreciate, Commissioner Starrett, your caution around the picking of winners and losers. And that's why we're going to have a robust grant evaluation process too. We have things that we want to see funded, and we have organizations that we've worked with. And I'm glad that we have a process so that there's a buffer there, and we know that the projects are really solid, that community needs, and then they're going to be a long-term impact.
It could be as easy as just saying other registered public benefit charities, and then deal with them when they come in. If there's somebody that we don't think fits the criteria that's been outlined, then we could do that, but that would be broad enough.
Okay. Sounds good. So we'll work on that language. Ken, was there something further you wanted to go over? I think you're muted or.
No, I was trying to
think quickly.
get myself back on track here a little bit and see if there was anything. No, I think those were
Multiple applications.
Yes, the multiple applications is the big one. Thank you, Carrie. So that's the other one, because I think what we've been seeing, we saw it with the water and sewer infrastructure, and you know and I think we've also seen it when we did the early kind of outreach and you know and seeing what types of projects and what the need is out there, that we've seen multiple requests come forward from a single organization. And the one thought that I had, and as far as a recommendation, because again, it just, you know, now we're asking a review committee to further evaluate the priorities within that organization. And there's something to be said about if you limit the number of applications that could be submitted, that organization does that prioritization for the committee and says, this is our top project, this is our biggest need. So then we can really look at doing the review and prioritization and selection based on you know, a more condensed and refined series of applications. And that was one thing that Carrie and I were talking about at length, and that's why we were really wanting to have this conversation about, you know, ways that we could curtail the number of applications that we're getting. So that way we know that we don't end up in a situation of picking a project that's not even that organization's number one project, even though they may say that all 4 applications are their top project, you know, so.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to that, and certainly would make our lives a little easier. Commissioners, any thoughts on that too?
I was leaning that way, and I was like, oh, no, Carrie, let's not do multiple in the first presentation. So I think having folks just say, this is the thing we want, and putting all of their effort into it. And that way the grant evaluators know, as Ken said, that they're evaluating this organization's top.
Okay, yeah.
Their time is really important as well.
Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering how we're planning on doing outreach on this. I know a number of nonprofits have submitted interest or gotten in touch with us a long time ago, and we keep saying, yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, we're working on it. How do we let them know we're actually working on it?
Well, I have that list currently of, you know, from the initial outreach. And so we can do, you know, based on organizations that were responsive to that original outreach, that we can do targeted outreach to those organizations on top of the publicizing through all of our other channels that we've been posting this grant program.
In addition to that, with the portal system, I have the ability to send a notification to every entity that has applied in the last 3 years under the nonprofit sort of umbrella. So they will all know what the dates are, what the openings are. We also send a copy of the final guidelines to the chambers and to SEDCOR and to COG and to all these people that also have newsletters and things to publicize.
Okay.
Any questions on any of the scoring criteria or the non-numerical? Everybody clear on that?
I did have one question, Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Okay, Carrie, I know that this is a really like a detail that you probably don't even care about and you'll figure it out. But I noticed that it said no score for the, like, have you had a project here? Mm-hmm. And there wasn't like a thing to put beside it, but the rest of them said that we're like a yes, no, we're a pass fail. Like, did you answer this? And I just want to like make sure that somebody who doesn't answer it isn't going to have the same level of, if they say no or they say yes, that's a great thumbs up. But if they don't answer it, they haven't completed the form.
Yeah, actually, I
Okay.
did think about that. So the other ones are pass fail because you must complete them according to the instructions. I don't want to call a yes, no, a pass fail to suggest that if you've said no, that you're a fail. So it's a required answer, but it will have no score associated and no other stigma.
Okay, as long as you know how to handle that. Okay, thank you, Chair.
But that will go in front of the committee members, right? They'll know, so-and-so has applied and received money before so-and-so hasn't.
Yeah, everybody who is on the review committee sees the full application for every entity, and it has the answer to every single question.
Okay. Okay, commissioners, any further questions?
I'm just really glad to see this here and now, and I'm recognizing how much work Ken, Christian, and Carrie have already done. Thank you for getting us to this point now.
Yes, absolutely.
Welcome. All right, thank you very much, commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
Nice job, Carrie.
Thank you.
Okay. So that ends our work session. We will move on to department updates, and we have none. And then the consent agenda. And I want to just note on the consent agenda, we actually have a reduction of a fee, which is very exciting. It's not often we get to vote on reductions. So commissioners, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Moving on to old business, we have none, and that brings us to other business. Item I1 is consideration of approval to authorize leave without pay for employee number 4358, effective from November 2nd, 2021, with an anticipated end date of January 31st of 2022. Commissioners, any discussion on this, Ken? Nope. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve item I1?
I move that we approve item I1, Chair.
Okay. Motion to approve. Those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Item I2 is consideration to authorize the treasurer to change the allowable portfolio percentage investment mix to be based on Yamhill County's current investment policy. And we were all on that call. I believe that was last week. And in essence, the change will help Treasurer Bledsoe simplify the portfolio, but also give her a little bit more flexibility in terms of the cash flow. And she does expect that it will bring in roughly an additional $100,000 of interest income. So all positive. And I will make a motion to approve item I2. Any further discussion?
Chair, I just want to note that Ken had unmuted himself, but he must have decided he didn't need to. You could shake your head if you don't need to speak.
Ken?
I was just going to highlight just really quickly, I think the big thing here is historically we've had a set amount, and this is going to a percentage, which is in the investment policy and it's consistent. And I just wanted to make sure we highlight that's the big change here is instead of the previous where there was a cap, it's going to be based on a percentage. So that's all I was going to add. And then I was also, if there were questions, I did notice that the treasurer is in the view room if there were specific questions for the treasurer.
Commissioners, any questions?
No, Chair.
No? Okay. So there's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Item I3 is consideration of approval of a letter of support to be submitted to the Public Health Accreditation Board for public health re-accreditation. And Ken, it looks like you want to take it away.
Well, I was going to ask because there were some questions that came up this morning for some additional information. I spoke with Director Manfred, and I think we're okay to hold off until next week. So this way, Lindsay can compile some information and share it with the board. So we're just asking to set this over until next week.
Okay, Christian, were you trying to say something? Or you?
No, I was just talking off into semester. No, I'm actually, this is not on this topic, but since you asked, Colton poked his head in. If there are any questions about the next item on the agenda, he just wanted to make sure that we knew that the board, he was there and could be promoted if the board had questions about it. Sorry.
Okay, sounds good. So we will hold over item I3 until the next meeting when we have further information. We don't have to vote on that. Okay. Item I4, consideration of approval in the matter of an order vacating a portion of a public street at the request of Julie L. Houghton and co-petitioners without a public hearing, Public Works docket RV-3-2021. Commissioners, any thoughts or discussion on this item? And it was included in the packet for review. Christian, any thoughts? Commissioner Sarah?
I was just going to move approval.
Okay. Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving item I4, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And I think I have an old agenda, so there's a number 5 now. Let's see. Yes. Item I5, consideration of approval of extending the COVID-19 paid administrative leave policy, Board Order 20-91 through February 28th of 2022. And Ken, do you have further thoughts on this?
This is my monthly request. We do, to extend the policy again. We are seeing with the current spike with the Omicron, and we're having employees continue to apply for this leave to cover quarantine period. So again, we're just bringing it forward again to extend it for another month, and then hopefully we'll see an improvement in the coming weeks, and we won't need this leave much longer. So,
Commissioners, do I have a motion to approve item I5?
Chair, I move that we approve item I5.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, that brings us to public hearings. We have none, and announcements. We had a Board of Health special ad hoc meeting yesterday. Commissioner Stair, did you want to kind of give a recap? I know both of us were on. I'm not sure if Commissioner Kula was listening. I couldn't see all of the attendees, but.
Basically, it was a special convening of the Board of Health, and we had a panel of doctors, and we had an attorney talking a little bit about some of the early treatment protocols and prevention, different things like that. We had a professor from Linus Pauling Institute at OSU talking about the importance of vitamin D, as did virtually everybody on our panel weigh in on the importance of vitamin D. And I think it was really exciting to see that level of discussion in the community, not only folks who joined the public comment period, but also folks who weighed in with letters. And it really opened up the parameters of, I think, what public health can be. I know in Yamhill County, we tend to take a broader approach to everything from addiction and recovery and housing and everything else. And I think this is going to bode well for public health. So my recommendation would be is that we listen to a lot of what we heard yesterday and try to expand on what we can offer our our citizens here in Yamhill County. So maybe next week we could have a discussion item or a motion about that. But I very much appreciated Director Manfrin and our Board of Health members. It was a wonderful discussion, and I wish we could have more of that so that folks can see just who are on our advisory committees and listen to the public talk about their thoughts. So I appreciate them getting together.
Yes, I agree. I was very impressed with our Board of Health members, and just hearing them talk and getting to know who they are was impressive. I also love that they had an interest in expanding the website, expanding the information, making it more accessible and workable to the public. So that was really, really great to see.
And Chair, I would just note that I've, especially with the Road Improvement Advisory Committee, but also with the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, that the public input, because those are two venues where there's been robust public input to our lay advisors. And I've really appreciated both having the public comment, but also watching these advisory committee members wrestle with these issues from their own unique perspectives, because we're asking them to not think about the whole county, but think like, this is the area that I know. How do these comments come into it with my value of supporting this department's mission, and also my experience in the world.
Great. Okay. Christian, I think we had an update on ODOT that was supposed to be coming in either today or tomorrow. Is that?
Yeah, as of this morning, I haven't heard. He indicated he'd have more information for me by the end of this week, but as of this morning, I have not heard anything else. So hopefully later today or tomorrow.
Okay. Great. Thank
and then,
you.
Chair, I have an update, or
Okay.
just two announcements that are foreshadowing the future, as it were. One is that I provided testimony and public comment to the Oregon Transportation Commission this morning on the how to use the flexible funds for the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And I probably didn't get that acronym right, but you know what I mean. OTC, the Oregon Transportation Commission, has had ODOT propose to them 4 different scenarios for how to spend that flexible money. And actually each scenario has a blocked off area of about 200 million of that 400 million in flexible, that they're saying this is not flexible. So that has created consternation across the transportation community, as it were, you might imagine. So there's a proposal to have a 5th scenario. I had to leave the meeting to join you before hearing more conversation about that 5th scenario, which is to really go back out to the public and find out, with that, the money that's there that ODOT is saying is inflexible, what communities actually would like to use that money for, rather than what ODOT staff thinks it should be used for. And I highlighted a couple of things in my testimony from finishing the bypass, because it's really important to actually finish it, to the as the road or the public works liaison, but you probably see this too. The number one concern of people when they email me, when they take the time to email, is unsafe intersections. And those are usually where state highways meet a county or a city road. That intersectional danger, Highway 18 is a good example where there's multiple. So I really press them to consider that when thinking about how to spend this money, rather than putting it off for the future. Like, we have this in a plan for 4 years from now, because an unsafe intersection is at risk of harming somebody kind of all the time. But Parkway also happened right before that this morning. And at Parkway, speaking of finishing the bypass, Hageberg had news that the Oregon Department of Transportation has an interest in setting aside 20 million for a 20 million local match that would then be submitted to the federal government. For within the infrastructure bill, there's money that's not a direct allocation to the state, but that's for surface transportation in rural areas. And so the ODOT is interested in applying for this, and they are interested then in hearing from us about our willingness to do a local match. And I will say that the numbers get thrown around all the time. I think that out of the proposal to restructure our existing debt to extend it into the future is more than 16 million. And so Chair Hageberg is going to go to ODOT Finance Department and bring back a proposal for all of us for that. So you should be expecting to see that sometime, I think, in the next month or so from the chair. And that concludes my remarks.
Okay, thank you. No, you mentioned the safety. That's another issue, I suppose, with Highway 18. There's competing interests. I feel like there's the county interest, and there's the city wants what they want, and then people are concerned about safety. And I cross that road all the time, so I know exactly what that's about. But okay, Commissioner Sterrett, any more announcements on your list?
Just really want to give some appreciation to the Housing Authority. They've continued to work with folks in foreclosure, and that is keeping people in their homes. They have a foreclosure avoidance program, and we know that our assessor has been sending out notices to folks who are on the radar who might be losing their homes to let them know there is a program to help them. And so, yeah, there's an awful lot going on at the Housing Authority as far as keeping people in their homes. So just want to say thank you to them.
Absolutely. Christian and Ken, any announcements or updates?
No, thank you. Nothing at this time.
No, thank you. Okay. Well,
Chair, it's 11.
I know, we barely made it. We all better be there then. Okay, looks like that's a wrap. So I will close out the January 20th, 2022. I can't believe it's already the 20th, but commissioners' formal, informal session.